Why do some people never explain themselves, even when everyone around them misunderstands them? It's not always because they don't care. Sometimes, they've learned something most people discover only after years of dealing with others. The more you explain yourself, the more power you can accidentally give away. Think about the last time someone misunderstood your intention. Your first instinct was probably to explain. You wanted them to understand what you meant, why you said it, and what really happened. But then something strange happens. One explanation leads to another. They ask another question. You answer that question. Then they challenge your answer. Suddenly, you're no longer simply explaining yourself, you're defending yourself. And this is where the psychology gets interesting. People who rarely explain themselves often understand one uncomfortable truth. Not everyone who asks for an explanation actually wants to understand you. Some people want information. Some want
Information. Some want reassurance. Some genuinely care about your perspective. But others are simply looking for something they can argue against. That distinction changes everything. A psychologically mature person doesn't automatically respond to every accusation, misunderstanding, or opinion. Instead, they first ask themselves a quiet question. Does this person actually need an explanation from me, or do they simply want me to prove myself to them? That distinction changes everything. A psychologically mature person doesn't automatically respond to every accusation, misunderstanding, or opinion. Instead, they first ask themselves a quiet question. Does this person actually need an explanation from me, or do they simply want me to prove myself to them? That question can save you from countless unnecessary arguments. Imagine someone says, "Why did you make that decision? You should have done it differently." You immediately start explaining your reasons. You tell them what happened yesterday, what you were thinking, what information you had, and why you chose that option. But they respond, "Yeah, but you still could have done this." So you explain again. Then they find another problem. Now you're trapped inside a conversation where you're constantly trying to earn approval for a decision that was yours to make in the first place. This is one reason some confident people keep their explanations short. They might simply say, "That was the decision I felt was right for me," and stop. Not because they have nothing to say. They could probably give you 10 reasons. They simply understand that giving 10 reasons creates 10 different things for someone else to attack. This doesn't mean you should never explain yourself. That would be another extreme. There are situations where explaining yourself is absolutely necessary. If you hurt someone, communicate. If you made a mistake, take responsibility. If someone depends on information from you, give them the information. If you're in a professional situation where clarity matters, explain your reasoning. The psychological difference is this. Healthy explanation is about communication. Excessive explanation is often about seeking permission to be accepted. And those are two completely different things. A person who constantly needs everyone to understand them may slowly become dependent on other people's reactions. If someone approves, they feel secure. If someone disapproves, they start explaining. If someone misunderstands them, they become anxious. If someone criticizes them, they feel compelled to defend themselves. Eventually, their emotional stability becomes connected to something they cannot control, other people's opinions. That is exhausting. Now consider the opposite person. Someone criticizes them. They listen. Maybe the criticism is useful. Maybe it isn't. They think about it. If they were wrong, they correct themselves. If they weren't wrong, they continue. They don't immediately enter a courtroom where they are both the defendant and the lawyer. That ability is often mistaken for arrogance. People might say they think they're too good to explain themselves. Too good to explain themselves. But sometimes the reality is completely different. They have simply learned that being misunderstood is sometimes the price of having your own life. You cannot control every interpretation of your actions. You can be kind, and someone can still call you fake. You can be quiet, and someone can call you rude. You can set a boundary, and someone can call you selfish. You can make a difficult decision, and someone can call you stupid. If your response to every interpretation is to immediately prove the opposite, You'll spend your life responding to other people's stories about you. And that's where silence becomes psychologically powerful. Silence doesn't always mean weakness. Sometimes silence means, I have heard you, but I don't believe I need to convince you. There is another reason people stop over-explaining as they become more confident. They become comfortable with uncertainty. Most people hate being misunderstood. Our brain naturally wants social acceptance. We want other people to understand our intentions because being rejected or judged can feel uncomfortable. So when someone misunderstands us, we experience a strong urge to correct the situation immediately. But confident people learn to tolerate that discomfort. They realize that not every misunderstanding needs to be fixed. That is a powerful form of emotional control. Think about social media. Someone posts an opinion. Another person disagrees. The creator responds. Then another person joins. The creator responds again. Soon, the original post has turned into a giant argument where everyone is trying to prove that their interpretation is the correct one. And here's the strange part. Most of those people will never meet each other, yet they're spending emotional energy trying to control the opinions of strangers. A person who understands this might simply close the comments, not because they lost, because they understand that attention is also a resource, and what you repeatedly give your attention to becomes part of your life. This leads to another psychological principle. Over-explaining can reveal more about you than you intended. When people feel pressured to defend themselves, they often reveal extra information. They tell someone what they're worried about. They reveal what criticism affects them. They disclose details that weren't necessary. And sometimes, the person they're explaining themselves to learns exactly which buttons to press next time. That's why calm, concise communication can be powerful. Instead of giving a 10-minute defense, you give the relevant information. Instead of trying to make someone agree, you allow them to disagree. Instead of saying, please understand why I did this, you might simply say, I understand that you see it differently. That sentence is powerful because it doesn't create a fight. You aren't agreeing. You aren't surrendering. You're simply acknowledging that another person has a different perspective. And that's a major difference between confidence and defensiveness. Defensiveness says, you must understand me. Confidence says, you can understand me if you want to, but I don't need to control your conclusion. This doesn't mean confident people never defend themselves. They absolutely do when something important is at stake. If someone spreads a serious false claim about you, you may need to clarify the facts. If someone violates your boundaries, you may need to speak firmly. If someone you care about is hurt because of your actions, you should communicate rather than hide behind silence. The key is knowing the difference between clarifying and convincing. Clarifying gives information. Convincing tries to control the other person's conclusion. And you cannot control someone's conclusion. You can only control the quality of your communication.